All right, then let's move on to, okay, let's talk about reading and literature, something I'm more qualified to talk about. Now, a couple of things. We tend to conflate reading and literature. The truth is, grammar stage is all about reading. It's not about literature. It's about becoming so comfortable with the written word that by the time you get into the middle grades, you're no longer struggling with it. And there are a couple of things in the grammar stage that we have to be aware of. First is that we have to be really careful about linking the skills of reading and writing together, because it is very common for students to be on very different developmental tracks when it comes to how hard their reading can be and how difficult their writing can be. So we just need to be sure that we pull those apart a little bit. It's also important to remember that there are 3 levels of reading in the grammar stage. There's instructional, and that means it's difficult. They're still decoding. They're still improving their reading skills. They're still trying to figure out what the sentences mean. It is very common when you're dealing with a grammar stage student who is reading something very difficult, particularly if they're reading it out loud, for them to read it out loud to you and then not have any idea what it said afterwards. Okay? That is because they're still working on actually getting the words out of their mouths when they're reading out loud. They're still decoding. It's very difficult to decode and listen to content at the same time. So one of the major goals of grammar stage reading ought to be exposing them to as much reading as possible so that they can stop decoding and listen to content instead. So whenever you're dealing with grammar stage students in the classroom, you should be assigning 3 kinds of reading. One is that difficult, that they're and you're not going to ask them to necessarily remember what they're reading. Second is on level, which means, that's a couple of levels below their instructional level. It's easy enough for them so that they can actually pay attention to the content. And then, I feel like this is often neglected, there should be a lot of below-level reading, because that's fun. And we forget that the reading is supposed to be fun. They should have plenty of opportunities to just cruise through books that are too easy. So, both as teachers and as parents, I am begging you to never say to your child, that book is too easy for you. Get something harder, right? They need the fun of reading. Whatever you have on your bedside table is probably not on level, okay? That's probably below level reading. And that's a very important part of reading. We all need that. So whenever, and I touched on this briefly, the goal here is to get them into the logic stage with enthusiasm and a sense of story. So they should read a lot, they should tell you what happened, and it's important for them to learn basic terms of reference. This is sort of the grammar of literature. They should know the difference between fiction and nonfiction. They should know some of the major genres in both. They should know the difference between a biography and historical fiction. These are just a few basic terms of reference. They should go into the logic stage being aware of these things, but it is so easy to kill a grammar stage student's love for reading by doing too much analysis. Okay, my husband's a minister, and he tells this story. I don't know if it's true or not, but he tells this story that I can't remember if he did this or if it was a friend of his as a youth pastor who's working with a whole bunch of elementary school students, and he's like, okay, kids, we're going to start off being really interactive. What do you think is gray and has a long fluffy tail and eats nuts? And there's this long silence. And then one of the kids says, I know the answer is supposed to be Jesus, but it sounds like a squirrel. And I love that story because it illustrates the pitfalls of doing too much critical analysis too early with young children. They stop enjoying the story and they start looking for the right answer. Yeah. So if I had my druthers, nobody would do literary analysis or criticism of any kind in grammar school. You would just read the stories and wallow around in them. You could ask them who, what, and when, and that's about it. Then as you move on into the logic stage, now you can start asking students to think about how literature works and why it works the way it does. And you can begin to teach them to write short essays as answers to those why questions. But here again, you got to be really, really careful not to overdo it. Remember, this is a developing critical faculty. It's not a developed critical faculty. So I think I have some questions here. So this is the kind of thing you should be doing, particularly in 5th or 6th grade. Once again, I think most literature curricula go too fast, too quickly. Don't give the student the chance to really develop basic skills. Who's the book about? What do they want? What keeps them from getting it? That's your classic narrative arc. Students have to be really, really comfortable identifying that before they can move on and do more complex literary criticism. What does the villain want? What do you think is the most important event in the story? Note that a question like, what does the villain want, is the sort of analytical question that you can't actually ask of a grammar stage student because they're still thinking in black and white. What does the villain want? Well, he's bad. That's it, okay? They have to grow up a bit, have that earth go around the sun, before they can begin to see these shades of, well, maybe there's not a good guy and a bad guy. Maybe they're just two people who want mutually incompatible things. That takes a little bit of maturity to understand, but it has to happen before they can really do literary analysis. How do the characters change? How many different stories does the writer tell? It's a beginning point of view question. So these are appropriate 5th, 6th to the beginning of 7th grade questions for students. They do not have to get into deeper analysis at this point, and in fact they shouldn't, because it's so easy to kill their love of reading in the middle grades. One of my nieces was in a class where they did, I think it was To Kill a Mockingbird, and they did To Kill a Mockingbird for 12 weeks. I thought, oh my goodness, you'd never want to pick that book up again, ever. So don't do that. Then it's important, as we talk about sort of middle grade literary analysis, to not just say what happened, but evaluate what was the most exciting part of the book, what was the most boring part of the book, getting them to pay attention to their own reactions. Did you like the character? That is, did the writer manage to create sympathy? Did you hope that they would get what they wanted? Did any part seem particularly real or unlikely? How well did the writer satisfy expectations that they set up? So just writing a single page in answer to any of these questions is an appropriate middle grade exercise in literary analysis. Just one page, talk about the book, write about it. What this is doing is preparing them for the rhetoric stage. One of the reasons why I keep saying don't spend too much, don't kill their love of reading, don't have them write pages and pages and pages about books, have them just do short essays, talk about the book, write a page, move on, is because one of our goals in the logic stage in reading, as it was in writing, is to expose them to as many patterns as possible. And the longer you camp out on a book analyzing that pattern, the less time you have to spend on other patterns. The preparation for the rhetoric stage ought to be exposing them to as many patterns as possible. As they move then on into the rhetoric stage, it's important that they learn essential literary terms. For example, what is a simile? And this, of course, is going to interact with the writing they're doing in all of the other subjects, because learning essential literary terms is a way of teaching them elocution, teaching them verbal strategies to use as they're developing their own thoughts all across the curriculum. And then starting to teach them the basic forms of literary analysis. And essentially those are, here's how this literary technique is used and here's why it matters. Something happened in the book which is similar to something that happened in the writer's life. That's biographical. Something happened in the writer's lifetime, not biographical, but at the time that the writer lived, which is parallel to what happens in the book. So that would be, for example, the orphan crisis in 19th century England that's reflected in Oliver Twist. Or the biographical one would be Jane Austen, mothers in Jane Austen's work, and Jane Austen's own mother, who would not get out of the bed when Jane Austen was dying of spine cancer, and then lived to be like 110 or something. That's a biographical parallel. There's explanations for Jane Austen's mothers. And then, as you can tell, this is my field. And then the other sort of major way to write about literature is what's called a response paper. And this is interesting to me because response papers are probably the first thing you get asked for in your college literature survey class, and almost nobody learns how to write them in high school. All it is discuss some element that's interesting or annoying and explain why it interests and annoys. Compare the work with something else, something contemporary, draw parallels. Argue that one of the characters acted in a way that's ethically right or wrong. What's different about a response paper than the analysis papers that I had up in the previous slide is that this requires a personal investment, your own personal reaction to it. That's why we're doing it in the rhetoric stage and not in the logic stage. We're asking the student to have an opinion about that.